So, along with that, Adam and I are going to the Foursquare convention next month, which is not nearly as exciting as it sounds. No, it'll be really a great time. He and I will be, I think it'll be the first time we've actually stayed in a hotel together since 1999. We went to a youth specialties convention in Denver. I know I'm a much more accomplished snorer now than I was those many years ago, so he's got that to look forward to. Plus, just, I'll be running over whatever he leaves on the floor, I'm sure. That's also exciting. But one of the speakers at the convention that I'm really, really excited about is a man named Bob Goff. You may have noticed we've added a couple of Bob Goff quotes on the church Facebook page a few times lately. Really a dynamite guy with a really interesting background. Officially, he's a lawyer, but a little more than that. He wrote a book. Oh yeah, I have the remote. Oh yeah, it's good. Hey, there's Bob. He wrote a book. I know, right? In reading the book, he's one of those where like, oh, we could be friends, because he's just a little bit off. He'd be a great youth worker also. He wrote this book called Love Does. That's not a tricky name. It's really about love, doing stuff. And we're going to be referring to it a couple of times this morning because it relates a lot to what we've been talking about in our council meeting, the passage I want us to look at this morning. And just as an aside, I hope we never come across like we think any other book is equal or authoritative like this book. Look, I brought an actual book. I know, right? This Bible was given to me in 1995 by the lovely and talented Angie Wilson. So that's how long it's been. So, wow, there we go. But just like a good teaching or a good lesson or a good whatever, a book written from, can offer another perspective, give us some insight, give us encouragement. Sometimes books about being a Christian or about leadership can be really frustrating for me because you get 2/3 into it and realize I can't do that. Yeah, that's a great ideal. Thanks, John Maxwell. But, I'm just kidding, I love John Maxwell. But some of his ideas I'm not really equipped to carry out. This was a book where, as I read it, I went like, yes, I want to do that. I want that to be me. I want to be that kind of a person. So we'll share a little bit from it this morning. A few quotes. Let's kind of set the tone with one from here. He wanted people who got to the do part of faith, not because he wanted activity, but because he wanted our faith to matter to us. When something is just an idea, it's hard to develop a real connection with it and have a commitment for it. There are ideas that I believe in, but really that's not where my soul is, because I don't do much about those convictions and ideas. One of the things he talks about, he's done some incredible things for international social justice things, particularly in Uganda. Here's how that got rolling. One little story from the book. It's an excellent book. Tells a lot of stories. Okay, so he had this buddy named Doug, and Doug told him that he and his wife were going to go to this high-end hotel for their anniversary. So Bob and his wife went to the hotel earlier in the day, checked in as Doug and his wife, went up to the room and ran up a $400 room service bill. Lobster, triple desserts, the good stuff. Big tip. Just so that when his friend was checking out the next day, he would freak out. I didn't order. Bob. And then later Bob got a call from an emissary from Uganda asking him to be the consul to represent Uganda in the United States. He was already been doing some work there. And he thought it was Doug playing a prank on him, so he just kept saying yes. And now that's certainly one of the things that he does, is he's the consul from Uganda to the United States. It's awesome. Like that's pranking on a level that I've never really approached. That's some good stuff, but nothing like that. I'll tell you one thing about the pranking. Adam is no fun. The whole point of pranking is to get that reaction. Hey, what are you doing? He just goes, you're done. Which he's brilliant, because he knows I give him that reaction when he messes with me. I just don't have that kind of willpower, I guess. Anyway, God wants us to do stuff, not just to be busy, but because that develops that connection in us. We're connected to something when we do it, when we live it, not just as an idea, but as a part of the core of who we are and what we're about in our lives. I hated homework that just felt like busy work. Hated. And still would, probably, I'm sure. Big projects and papers, I was in. That worksheet where we had to just essentially prove that we read the chapter, which I didn't read anyway. Just look for the bold words to fill in the form. No, that just drove me nuts. Sorry about all those C's, Dad. Paid a lot of money for some of this. Sorry, Mike Stack. He's one of our teachers. Just in case he's watching. We're friends on Facebook. Also, right there, Justin, I want to just point out, I was really tempted to go on a little Mike Stack tangent, and I reined it in, and did not. So, just that level of self-control sometimes I have. All right, so we're going to read from Luke chapter 14 this morning. We're going to start at verse 16. Just kind of set the stage. Jesus was hanging out with some people. He was at a big dinner, and there were some important people there, and there was a lot of discussion. And somebody just said something that was a little, sounded right, but was a little off. And then this is what Jesus says. Then Jesus said to him, "Someone gave a great dinner and invited many. At the time for the dinner, he sent his slave to say to those who had been invited, 'Come, for everything is ready now.' But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said to him, I have bought a piece of land, and I must go out and see it. Please accept my regrets." Another said, "I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I am going to try them out. Please accept my regrets." Another said, "I have just been married, and therefore I cannot come." Not all of these are flimsy excuses. Not all of these are, some of these are valid, but as Jesus is sharing this as a parable, none of those people are experiencing everything they could have experienced. The thing that they chose over being at the banquet was less than the banquet. They missed out on something pretty significant. Even though the thing they were doing may have been valid and legit, but it wasn't the best thing. See, this guy had already invited everyone who would have been a natural, invitation to this dinner. Friends, colleagues, Facebook friends, Instagram followers, everyone that should have been invited, he didn't invite. And they all make excuses and don't show up. Verse 21. So the slave returned and reported this to his master. Then the owner of the house became angry and said to his slave, "Go out at once into the streets and lanes of the town, and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame." Essentially, Okay, well, go get the people that wouldn't normally be invited. Go get the people who are kind of outcasts, who kind of get ignored in society, kind of the reject people. And I gotta tell you, that is just all kinds of reassuring to me. That people that are a little bit on the outside of what's normal. That was kite flying in Davenport in 1993, by the way. In fact, Angie would want me to point out the awesome 2 different kinds of stripes going on there with the shorts and the tucked in long sleeve shirt. Yeah, you're welcome. I have a long history of being one of those people who is not on, the in crowd. One time when I was in junior high, I finished 3rd in a speech meet when there were only 3 contestants. When we would be picking teams, like in PE, it was a foregone conclusion I would be last, but that didn't always settle it. Sometimes it would be like, okay, and you guys get Gabe. And it'd be like, no, it's cool. You can have him. No, really, it's fine. No, you have him. Tell you what, you take him and we'll play with our pants down around our ankles. Just, had some experiences that a little lesser. It's always a challenge to come into a new situation and not know people. Feel like you're an outsider, even if you have a lot to give and to offer. The people that this guy sent his slave out to go invite to the dinner, we don't know anything about their character, their personalities, their strengths, just that they were tipped generally on the outside looking in at what was going on at the cultural hotspot of this guy's house. And he sends for them because the people who should have been there declined. Sometimes people who are supposed to, the church folk, religious people, sometimes we miss it. We make excuses. We don't do the best thing. And we know lots of churchy sounding words to make it sound like we're doing something important. But sometimes we let those things keep us from the best thing, from being in God's presence, to being at that table with Him. And one of the purposes of this story that Jesus is telling to a room full of people who are in the in crowd and we're jockeying for the seats of honor, that the other people matter also. Verse 22. And the slave said, "Sir, what you ordered has been done, and there is still room." I'm really hesitantly going to use a word here that's going to sound harsher than I intended it to mean, but it'll be a little hyperbole, all right? A little exaggeration for the sake of making a point. Sometimes church can be sort of like a clubhouse. This is where we come and hang out, and we say the right things, but really we don't want anyone else coming in. We're really comfortable with our little club and want it to just stay our little club and do the things and feel good about each other. And that's not this church alone. Churches are like that sometimes.
Yes.
And usually unintentionally, right? We get into a, yeah, it's comfortable and we want it to stay like that. I like being comfortable. I spend great time and money to make myself more comfortable just in general. but does your chair not do this? Yeah. I'm really, really grateful for health insurance because I literally have never owned a car that cost as much as this chair. So thankful for that. But this statement, that there is still room, man, that is what church is supposed to be. There's still room. And he says, verse 23, then the master said to the slave, go out into the roads and the lanes and compel people to come in so that my house may be filled. For I tell you, none of those who are invited will taste my dinner. There's some stuff going on there that is heavy duty, and I don't mean to gloss over, but kind of that's like another topic kind of thing. So consequences of the people who should know better and just ignore God. Well, that's another day. But in this, the key thing here is go. Go. Adam isn't here this morning, not just because he's a good dad and his kid has a baseball tournament, but because as a believer, but especially as a pastor, it's really easy to only ever spend time with church people. Really easy. I was a youth pastor. That was my job for 10 years. And met a lot of people, but almost all of them at the church. At least people I got to know. You know? Because I wasn't going. For a little less than a year and a half, I owned a comic book store, comic books and baseball cards and stuff. I met so many more people in that amount of time who didn't go to church than I did in the 10 years working at church, because I was out. I had gone to where people were. And really, except for the sinking deeper into crippling debt every month, that was just a fantastic gig. That was a little bit iffy, but my job was talking to people about baseball and comic books, which I do for free all the time anyway. So it worked out pretty well. Also, not a lot of jobs where action figure arranging is a important job skill. I had a lot of experience in that also. But go, not create a Facebook event. Go. I think Jesus would have been a very rare Facebook user. That's my. I don't know that it's not inherently good or bad. Just it can, I don't think that's how he would have chosen to communicate and connect with people very often. Let's go back to this idea that there is still room. This idea should drive us. This idea, because we know the amazing, life-altering, eternity-changing benefits of being at the table. We get so comfortable there sometimes at that table. Even just leaving the room, it's pretty nice in here at this table because there's still more snacks and deliciousness. I have a hard time walking away from food that's good. I'm sure that surprises you. You might not have guessed that about me. I don't miss a lot of meals. But as we go, I think there's something important for us to keep in mind. There's another Bob Goff quote. In a world driven by self-promotion and spin, Jesus modeled something different for us. Jesus was saying that instead of telling people about what we're doing all the time, there's a better way. One that doesn't require any capes that can get snagged on something like ourselves. Maybe Jesus wants to be secretly incredible instead. Why was Jesus born in a little town, in a little country, geographically, at a time when transportation and communication were so limited, when he could have been so much more known if he had come to America today and waited for that, or he could have been on all the channels, had his own channel, woo, and a blog, and, because he wasn't about fanfare and showing off. He did some things to demonstrate who he was, but that's not the same as, look at me, I just healed the guy, woo! In fact, more often when he did things like that, he would say, okay, but don't tell anyone. Okay, but don't tell anyone. Keep that to yourself. We've had this encounter, but I don't want that getting out. Because it was never about ego. He was here for the most important purpose in the history of purposes. And he wasn't a guy that was demanding attention. One of the words that Bob uses a lot in this book that I normally don't think of in relation to my faith is whimsy. Also, I was really excited because in my font organizing program, I have a category called whimsical and girly, and I almost never get to use fonts from that little folder, so I was really excited to get to pour through and ooh. I made that sound too all when I was sitting there by myself. Whimsy. Following Jesus should be fun and an adventure and joyful and life-changing and sometimes life-ruining and whimsical and passionate and a little irresponsible at times. And if it's not those things, ever, we're probably doing it wrong. And when I say we, I mean we. This is one of those where it's convicting. This book is fun, this concept is important, but it's been convicting because I like being comfortable. I don't really like going. I like being here with you because we're tight, even if we're still getting to know each other. We're my people. But following Jesus should be an adventure. And it's not something that always needs to have every step planned out. Jesus didn't, when he recruited the disciples, it wasn't like unrolling a big long scroll or had a PowerPoint with a 3-year plan. Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to go to Galilee. And it wasn't it. It was an adventure. If we're not living this way, and we're not seeing the results that deep down we know we want to see or should want to see, maybe it's time to let some of those ways go. One more Bob quote. Really? Just one? Oh, there might be another one after this. I don't know. Let me tell you what I do when I don't know what to do to move my dreams down the road. I usually just try to figure out what the next step is and then do that. Sometimes we have in our minds some big dream, some big hope, something we would really love to do, and it sounds so daunting and so overwhelming that we never take a step down that road because we don't know how to get from here to there. One of the stories he tells is in Uganda, he had learned that a lot of people were in prison, especially youth, in prison and had been in prison for years without ever having had a trial. Just an accusation in a lot of cases. And there were kids that had been in Ugandan prison for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And so he took a team, they went to Uganda and tried to figure it out. And we brought some other lawyers and they started, one of the instances he never got, the kids that he asked the warden, I guess, why haven't they gotten a trial? And he said, well, we don't have enough money to put gas in the bus to drive them to the court. And he's like, it's right there. I can see it from your office. And he said, well, also there are no judges hearing those cases. There are no judges there. And as he grew to understand the magnitude of the situation, I think it would have been really easy to go, well, this is way beyond what I'm capable of handling. I'm going to pray that God sends somebody good. He just did the next thing. Okay, well, the next thing would be, let's start looking at these cases. Let's get those files. Let's try to get a judge. Let's find, just one step. And if you've got something that is one of those big, heady, man, I wish I could do that, that'd be awesome to serve God in that way, but it sounds so impossible. One step. That's how it starts. One step. Growing up, our church had the youth pastor that was there when I started in youth group had been there for many years. We started attending Oak Park Assembly in 78, 79, and he'd already been there. He was the first person to give me any kind of formal leadership role in a church. One of my very favorite people. But his family and another family, God was putting on their hearts to start an orphanage in Mexico. And, let's be honest, you're never going to be wealthy as a youth pastor. At least, probably shouldn't. I guess Doug Phoenix, but that's because he writes a lot of books. That's fine. That's good. Way to go, Doug. But at least it's a steady check, in a decent sized church. Give that up, this other family, and they moved to Mexico. And eventually, Poncho left and did some pastoring. Now he's back at Oak Park as an associate, doing some really cool stuff. But that orphanage has grown into this amazing living thing of Bible Institute and schools and churches and training and food and clothing, and it's become this immense thing. They had no idea it was going to be that. They didn't even know how to do what they were thinking about doing. So they took a step. Okay, well, this guy's got to go jump through these hoops to raise money. We got to do this. We got to find a spot in Mexico. We got to do, one step at a time, one step at a time. And thousands of people had their lives impacted because they were willing to give up what was comfortable and go do something that they didn't know how to do, but they knew that God was with them. We're going to, a couple points of forgot about that. And he says to ordinary people, Bob's talking about God here. He says to ordinary people like me and you, that instead of closing our eyes and bowing our heads, sometimes God wants us to keep our eyes open for people in need, do something about it, and bow our whole lives to Him instead. No cakes. A couple things we can take away. Situational awareness is something that far too many people lack when they are driving a car or a shopping cart. or interacting with other people in any way. I've inappropriately suggested to people sometimes that they consider developing some situational awareness. Sometimes people, like that time we were leaving that hotel, remember? I mean, you weren't there, but remember? And, we were leaving, and somebody had the cart with their luggage blocking the little ramp for me to go down. And so I just ran into it and pushed it way out of the way. And just went, hey, maybe pay attention, and a little situational awareness. That was probably inappropriate. Totally worked. When that kind of stuff happens, I'm always just afraid that oh, they're coming to church this week. I know, it's been a while since that happened, but it's a good reminder for me to just not be an idiot and treat people well. Don't be an idiot and treat people well. Not that being an idiot requires, all right, just making sure. Situational awareness is we need to pay attention. We need to know what's going on. We need to know that there are hurting people. We need to be looking at other people's lives. We need to get our, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone, get our eyes off of our stinking phone, off of our computer, which again, get out of our house, talk to some people, and find out what's going on. There's crazy things happening in Modesto, in this state, in this country, and in the world. We need to know about some of that stuff. We can't fix all of it. I can't address all of the world's problems. I know that's shocking. I can't. But man, I need to be aware of it. Man, I need to be aware of something that's going on. Someone is hurting around me that I'm going to have the opportunity to do something about. But I can't if I don't know it, and I won't know it if I'm not paying attention. We need to say yes more often. I don't like that because saying yes requires doing more stuff. I prefer to do less stuff. Given the choice of doing something and not doing something, I will almost always choose to not do something. But that's not how it's supposed to be. That's not what Jesus modeled for us. That's not the instructions that he gave us. I need to do a better job of, hey, could you? Yes. When Bob's friend called, well, the guy that was actually from Uganda that he thought was his friend, since he thought it was his friend, he just purposed to say yes to everything he said, no matter how ridiculous it was. Yes, I will fly to New York next week to meet you. Yes, I will do this. Yes, I will go to the White House. Yes, okay. And then ended up doing all of those things. He said yes to them. And little stuff. Could you watch my kid? Could you help us move? Can you give me a ride to the airport? Can you, whatever. And so many of you are so good at that already. This is a room full of people, many of whom have said yes to ridiculous and unreasonable requests that have been made of you. Good. Keep saying yes. Sometimes in church we develop this unspoken hierarchy, and we think that people who, there's different levels of competence and qualification, and if you're someone up front, that means no, it doesn't mean anything. It's not about what degree you have, how many verses you have memorized. It's not about anything other than us wanting to follow Jesus and say yes and love people actively. You don't need to be more qualified than you are right now to do those things. Do you care about that? Do you have some even vague interest in saying yes and helping people? Then you're qualified. Do it. You don't need a cape. You don't need to be a superhero. You don't need to have a degree. You don't need to have a title. You just need to do it. Don't wait. Don't wait until you're qualified. Don't wait until you're smart enough. Because that will never happen. Our pastor is disturbingly intelligent and insightful. It kind of drives me nuts sometimes. Because when I first met him, he was way more into that, like, just pretending he was a dumb jock guy, until you said something wrong about World War II, and then he would just drop the knowledge on you. That used to be his approach to a lot of things. And so some of the time I could feel like I was comparably intelligent and insightful. No longer do I feel that way. And he feels generally inadequate to fill the role that he does. The guy is perfectly suited for what he does, for the role that God has him in. And he doesn't feel like he's got it together enough to really be doing that, but he's doing it because he feels like that's what God told him to do. You're never going to feel qualified. Billy Graham doesn't feel qualified. Amy Semple McPherson didn't feel qualified. She just felt a calling and had a boldness and said yes a lot. We can talk about Sister Amy some other time. Radical, crazy, lived for Jesus, brought a jillion people into the kingdom, and founded our particular family of churches, Foursquare, which we're part of a denomination, but I like it because we know we're not the only denomination that loves God, and we like to be friends with other kinds of churches. So that's important to me. We're not one of those denominations that thinks we've got the right answer. Everybody else is a little bit off. That's not us. It's good.
We're a little off.
Well, yeah, but that's just us. As a movement, we're fun. We still have Jack Hayford, so we must be fun. I mean, he's not in any formal role right now either, but he's still around. Ultimately, love is about doing stuff. It's not about knowing stuff about God. It's not about even knowing stuff about each other. I know a lot about Adam. I know a lot about him. But if that was the extent of my connection to him, was having the information in my head about him, there's really no connection. I know a lot about Will Clark. I know that he was born March 13th, 1964. And he went to Jesuit High School in New Orleans. I know that he went to Mississippi State. I know that in the '84 Olympic team he had 429. I know that in 1987 he had 308 with 35 home runs and 91 RBIs. I know his brother's name is Scott. I know his parents are Bill and Sue. I know a lot about him. And yet, there's, as far as I know, there's still not a restraining order, but, and yet, really, that's the extent of my connection to Will Clark, is I've seen him, I've gone, woo, when they announce his name. I own some baseball cards that he has signed, but in a relationship, when there's real love, it requires doing. I'm going to tell you one more quick story. Angie usually works it so that when I'm speaking in here, she is with the kids. She denies that that's intentional, but come on, 17 times in a row. She's not going to watch the video. She's no time for that. So, the first Valentine's that we were together, we were just dating, 1995. I really was an idiot because I set the bar way too high, and I've never lived up to that since. I should have just, here's a flower, and just built up to something that, no. Adam conspired with me, and she and I drove up the coast. We're going to Bethany College in Scotts Valley. Drove up the coast to just south of Davenport. Got out to take a little walk over, across a field to see the ocean where the cliffs were. And this particular spot, the cliff kind of came, then there was a little kind of and then another little spot. And on that other little spot, a table set up. Adam borrowed it from the school. He took it back. Music going, Chinese takeout, flowers, ocean. I went high end, right? Again, stupid. She married me, so I guess that's a bonus, but 20 years later and I'm still trying to live up to the standard I set like a moron. Because there had to be action, because there was dreamy, googly eye kind of love going on. I don't think that either of us realized at the time, like, the extent to which I was the winner as far as getting the better end of that arrangement. Like, I'm so far out of my league with her. It's ridiculous, but she's committed now, so that's it. She's stuck, which is good for me, because now she knows, like, I have a better awareness of how awesome she is, and she has a much better awareness of how dumb I am. But love's about doing that. Make some friends. Here's why I like that Adam isn't here this morning. It's not just about being a good dad. It's that there are people over there at Bel Paso today who don't have a connection to a church, who don't know Jesus, who don't understand the Bible or why it's authoritative. He's not there to go share apologetics on the bench between innings. He's there to love people and give his time to serve. He's over there because it's hard sometimes when you're stuck in here to express love to people who aren't at the table yet. So he went to where they are. I like that a lot. I like going to a church where a pastor, it'd be a little tough to do his job if he was never here. But once in a while, he's got to be where some people are. Right on. Once in a while, if you're not here because you're out where people are, that's okay too. I like being in a church where we have that freedom, where your salvation is not keyed to your attendance percentage. It's just not how it is. You need to make friends. I'm bad at this. I live in my little bubble. I need to be much more intentional about connecting with people. I don't go a lot of places. At 7 miles an hour, there's only so far I can go. 17-mile range. That's round trip. I can just go 17 miles and then hope someone can pick me up.
How'd you get yours to go?
We need to make friends. And while you're at it, be awesome. Not in that look at me, I'm awesome way. Just be awesome because of who you are in Christ. Living the life this way will naturally lead to more of Jesus in us, and that leads us to be more awesome. Not in the strict technical definition of others will be full of awe around us. Just, awesome. After our last council meeting, I kept thinking about a story that the guy told me one time. He was doing this ministry where he was going to small churches and helping them reach their communities, doing events, serving their community. Interesting guy, real funny. And he was on his way to go speak at a church one time, stopped at a gas station. Was filling up, talked to the guy who worked there, told him, I'm going to try to do this thing, that's what I do, I don't churches, I'm going to this other church to speak tonight. And when he told him about what his organization did, it was just him and a volunteer administrator. But when he told him about what he did, trying to help small churches, help people, the guy at the gas station just said, about time. And he went, oh, I had a sermon I was going to preach at this church tonight, but I'm going to preach your sermon. About time. The church is supposed to be serving our community. The church is supposed to be light in the darkness. The church is supposed to be a place that offers people hope. Okay, one last thing. We talk about not being showy, not having the capes, not drawing and demanding attention when we do things. But sometimes there have been some largely dumb comic book stories where a superhero will get amnesia and forget that they're a superhero. Pretty common in the 50s, but that happened to Clark Kent more than once. Wait, what? But there's a moment sometimes in comic books where you get this and reveals what's underneath. And when that happens, you know things are about to get good. You know that what's inside is about to come out. We don't have to do this. We don't have to ever have that moment of, woohoo, I'm here now, everything will be okay. But we need to always remember what's inside. Always. That we have the Holy Spirit of God in us that gives us power to do things far beyond our natural abilities. To have impact that lasts for eternity because of what's inside us. Sometimes just mentally, maybe you need to do that. All right, we'll pray. God, thanks that you care about everybody, that for those of us who felt on the outside and rejected in so many situations, thanks that you embrace us. You want us at your table. We want to be people who actively love because you love. Help us to go. Help us to make friends. Help us to be awesome. Help us to do stuff. Help us to say yes more. Thanks that because your Spirit is within us, we can do things that matter, that really, truly matter. Help us to see those opportunities wherever they are. Bless Adam and Lisa today as they're shining brightly in a place where some people are still in darkness and maybe don't even know it. Thanks for being with us this morning. In Jesus' name. All right, thank you very much. You are dismissed.